Hello everyone and welcome to the first lesson of my landscape photography tutorial. If you don't know what this is about, I'll be teaching you guys everything that I learned about landscape photography on YouTube for free. If this is something that you're interested in, please go ahead and subscribe and I'll try to release videos weekly. So the first lesson is about gear, smartphone, and RAW mode. I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of people always ask me what kind of camera do I use, what do I shoot in, what focal length, and so on. And this is something that I wanted to explain a little bit. So I originally started with the 60D, the Canon 60D, the 2010 one, not the 60, the 60D. And that's a really old camera and I think I got a lot of great shots on it. So if I go back to my Instagram real quick, a lot of the older shots such as this shot right here, or all of these, this one right here, all of these old shots are from the Canon 60D. And I think it's very capable despite what people say. A lot of critics, such as DxO Mark, say that this camera does not have the best dynamic range, but I think it's fine as long as you expose properly. So I think there are three things you need for landscape photography. So the first one is a camera, the second one is a tripod, and the third one is a lens. A lot of people always ask me what focal length do I shoot at. Right now I shoot with the EOS R at usually 24 or 15 millimeters. Yeah, so 15 millimeters, you can really go close to an object. You have to focal stack though, but you can go really close to an object and really bring out, you can see the clovers, you can exaggerate them greatly and you can create a lot of depth. For 24, I think it's great for landscapes more far away, like this was at 24 I believe. I think this one was at 24 as well, but 24 and 15 are my two favorite because you can really exaggerate objects. And tripod, I recommend a sturdy tripod for the ocean, for seascapes. I like to use a aluminum tripod because I just feel like it's sturdier and they break easily too. So, if you're constantly going to the ocean and putting it into the sand, the wear and tear is very extreme, and you can run through a couple tripods in a year. So I just like to go aluminum for seascapes. And then for hiking, for more mountainy scenes, places where I have to hike more, I like to go lighter tripods, probably like carbon fiber or something. But honestly, just find a tripod that you like, find a tripod that suits you, and you should be good to go. All right, so let's talk about a couple of misconceptions. The first misconception I want to talk about is that you need a $5,000 camera to take good shots, and that's completely false. I've took a bunch of shots on my old 60D and I think they're perfectly fine. You just need to learn how to expose properly, and we'll be covering that in a future lesson. The second misconception is don't abuse dynamic range. Right? So you can't just take a really dark image and expect to, bring up the shadows in post, because that defeats the purpose of photography, right? You want to expose properly and then fine tune it a little bit and whatever editing software you use later, right? So if you don't know what dynamic range is, it's basically the difference between the darkest and lightest tones in the image. So when people say dynamic range in photography, they're saying like, oh yeah, if I take a completely dark image, I can just raise the shadows and everything will be fine, right? Everything will be normal. Vice versa, same thing with the bright areas. If you have a completely blown image and if your camera has great dynamic range, you're able to recover all those details lost in the sky or the overexposed areas, right? Another misconception, but we're talking about smartphones, is that smartphones are better than what we use, the dedicated camera. Smartphones are better than mirrorless DSLRs or any dedicated cameras. And this is false because smartphones, a lot of times they take HDR images. If you look on the corner, there's a small symbol that says HDR. And what that does is basically take three images, one overexposed image, one neutral, and one underexposed image. And and they merge it together, and then they process it a little bit. They add a little bit of saturation, contrast, sharpening, and then they output it as a JPEG. And then at most of the time, it looks better. So you can see in this example right here that this JPEG looks great. You know, it has, you know, you can see the building a little bit. Or let me reset it. You can see the building a little bit. The sky looks great. There's so much color to it. Whereas on the raw file, this was taken by my phone, Moto G, by the way. The raw file looks terrible, right? There's no color at all. And then the last thing I want to also cover is that some people say smartphones are not capable. I think they're fully capable. You can shoot in RAW, JPEG. There's a lot of options, right? I shot this one in RAW, but I color corrected it, and it gave me so many options. It gave me so much flexibility to work with, right? All right, so yeah, that's about it for the introduction, and let's move on to RAW mode. I think everyone should be shooting in RAW mode. Every camera, every smartphone, or most smartphones these days have the option to shoot in RAW mode. And this is what you need to stretch out your image. If you really want to fully maximize your image, you want to shoot in RAW mode. RAW mode, if you're not familiar, is the minimally processed data from the image sensor. So as you can see between these two images, right, this is the RAW mode. There's not a lot of processed data, right? It's not, you know, processed. They didn't add any saturation, no contrast, so on. But on a JPEG, they already process it for you. They compress it, they process it, and output it as a JPEG. So, you know, that's why it looks like this. But if you want full command of your image, then shoot in RAW mode. And this is something that I really recommend, because moving forward into the later lessons, we'll be using all RAW images. So this is a RAW image I took on the 60D, and I think this image is fully capable of becoming a very dramatic, you know, moody image. I shot this during the day. I shot this with the ND filter. That's why there is those long waves. And you can see that RAW, because we shot in RAW, we're able to raise the shadows and recover some of these shadows that we lost due to the exposure. The same thing can be said about the sky. If you think the sky is a little bit too bright, we can decrease the highlights a little bit. And look, you can see the edge of the cloud now. And that's possible because of RAW mode. So I highly encourage you guys to try shooting in RAW mode if you haven't already. All right, so we're going to take a look at this example right here. So this is the RAW image and this is the JPEG. We're going to be comparing the differences between the RAW and the JPEG. So you can see right now there's minimal differences, probably just in shading, tone, a little bit. But let's take a look at the volcano. So I'm going to raise the exposure, maybe to around, yeah, like right there is good. I'm going to raise this one, try to make them very similar. I think this one's a little bit too bright. You can raise this one a little bit more. All right, okay, that looks good. So let's zoom in a little bit further. So you can see on the RAW image, it looks pretty clean, right? This is 3:1 ratio, so of course it's going to have some grain. We are pushing the exposure plus 1.75, so of course it's going to have some grain, but it looks pretty clean for the most part. But let's take a look at the JPEG. Look at this. All right, so we lose a lot of detail. You see those green and purple spots, right? That's a result of, that's called like JPEG artifacts, and that's a result of pushing the image too far, right? We're changing the exposure way too much, and it creates these artifacts, right? These things that we don't want here. It looks nasty, right? It's all over the place, basically all throughout the image. And in the RAW, there's none at all, right? You can see none of it. So if you take a look at the difference between the file sizes, the RAW is a lot bigger than the JPEG, probably 2 times or even more than 2 times bigger, right? I would say the JPEG is around like 14 megabytes, and then the RAW is around 30 something. So the RAW stores a lot more data, and it doesn't process it for you already. You can see on the JPEG, they changed the color a little bit. No, a little bit different, right? Let me reset it. The JPEG looks a little bit better out of camera, but you want the RAW so you can customize your photo. All right, and let's take a look at the smartphone photo one more time. So remember that this is taken with the Moto G, $150 phone. And I'm shooting in RAW mode on the left-hand picture, and on the right-hand picture, this is the JPEG. So out of camera, right, the JPEG looks great. This is the JPEG. The RAW doesn't look so good. And then I made some minor adjustments, and then I made it like this. I was able to customize it, so that was pretty cool. But I wanted to zoom into the building a little bit. All right, let's reset the shadows. Okay, so if we raise the shadows of the JPEG building, you see all these artifacts come in, right? It's a lot of distortion, a lot of banding. These green and purple spots come back again. And then if you take a look at here, let's raise the shadows. There's a lot of noise, but it's pretty clean. You can see the distinct lines. Remember that this is taken with a smartphone, and it is pretty dark too, right? The base image is dark. All right, we are in compare mode, and you can see the differences, right? One is a lot more clear, right? This is the raw image, and the JPEG looks a lot more compressed, right? You can see so much banding, you can see the green spots, the purple spots, so on. So that wraps it up for this video. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments below, and thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video.